The TCU run game has to take a big jump in 2025. Just how big, I'll tell you next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. Thank you for making Locked On Horned Frogs your first listen. The Big Ten has a playoff proposal, and I actually have a different opinion than most people who care about the Big 12 would have, I believe. So I'll break that down in segment 2. Some of your thoughts. We got our mailbag segment in segment 3, but we start today with something I've talked about a lot this offseason. TCU has to get better in the run game in 2025. That is not a secret. It doesn't take an expert to tell you that. If you watched this team last season, you understood if Savion Williams was not back there as a Wildcat quarterback, or Haas Haney in a essentially Wildcat quarterback situation because they did not trust him to throw the football, then the chances that TCU was going to have a successful run play were pretty slim. It has to change this upcoming season. Sonny Dykes said it at Big 12 Media Days and other places that they're going to have to run the ball better this year. They've added Cade Bennett to their offensive line, who's coming back from a back injury, a couple new tackles in Ryan Hughes and Ben Taylor Whitfield, young players that have been in the program for a few seasons. Carson Bruno and Remington Strickland battling it out for that right guard spot. Colton Deary at center. That's what it looks like up front. Your running backs, we're not sure yet. The closer we get to the UNC game, the more I think Kavorian Barnes, the UTSA transfer, is going to be your starter. I don't know if it'll be his job the entire season, but I think he's going to be the one that gets the first crack at it when the season starts. How much better does the run game need to be for this team to be a championship contender? Because the bottom line is, that's the expectation for me this season. I think TCU needs to be playing in Arlington for a Big 12 championship for this year to be considered a success, right? I would venture to say a lot of you agree with me. So I wanted to take a look at the top 4 teams in the country from last season and the Big 12 champion, how they ran the ball, and how it compared to how TCU ran the ball last year. So Ohio State, your national champion, defending national champion, they had 2 running backs with over 1,000 yards. They averaged 5 yards a carry total. Now, Travion Henderson averaged 7 yards a carry. They ran for 4,208 yards on the season, which if you divvy that up between the games they played, they rushed for 263 yards per game. Notre Dame. This is not a great comparison for TCU because Riley Leonard, their quarterback, ran for 900 yards, but Jeremiah Love ran for 1,125 yards, almost 7 yards a carry. Overall, as a team, they averaged 4.9 yards per carry. And they ran for 200 yards a game, 3,215 yards for your season total. Texas, Trey Wisner, 1,067 yards. Had about 5 yards a carry. Jaden Blue, 730 yards, also around 5 yards a carry, 5.5 actually. As a team, their yards per carry total is actually 4.3, but a lot of that had to do with Quinn Ewers. His rushing yards were essentially just sack yardage. They ran for 2,540 yards and 169 yards per game. They are actually the team that TCU was closest to when you look at their stats from last season. But even then, it's a pretty significant jump from where Texas was to where TCU was last year. Penn State, they had a 1,000-yard rusher. In Allen, they had 2,000-yard rushers because Nick Singleton also ran for 1,000 yards, averaged about 5 yards per carry, 5.3. They ran for 3,237 yards on the year, averaged 231 rushing yards per game. Arizona State, Cam Scatterbo had an outstanding year, 1,711 yards, almost 6 yards a carry. Overall as a team, 4.7 yards per carry. They ran for 199 yards per game. So 4 of these 5 teams ran for over 200 yards per ball game. I'm rounding up Arizona State's total there. It was technically 199, but they're right there on the mark. And the one that didn't was Texas, but they still had a 1,000-yard rusher and another running back who ran for over 700 yards on the year. So where does TCU fall in this? Last season, Cam Cook led the team in rushing with 460 yards. Savion Williams had 322. Cam Cook averaged 3.9 yards per carry. Savion averaged 6.3. He was very efficient when he ran the ball. As a team, 3.7 yards per carry, 1,481 yards across the year, which came out to 113 yards per game. So not even close to 200 yards per game. The closest they came for as far as per game totals was Texas at 169. Their leading rusher falls about 700 yards short of any other leading rusher on a team that was playing for a title. So the question becomes, is it feasible to take this big of a jump in one season? I think it is. Now, 2 years ago, the team struggled. They ended up 5-7, but Amani Bailey still ran for over 1,000 yards, had a productive year, and that was with two quarterbacks alternating in and out due to injuries, and frankly, a team that couldn't really pass the ball. One thing that I came away really impressed with looking at this is Josh Hoover had an incredible year. I know I'm not breaking news to people here, but there was a time I remember after the Tech game, which they won that game, so it's kind of funny in retrospect. But I got a couple emails and people were reaching out to me that week. I don't even really remember saying this, but at some point I was like, I'm really thankful for Josh Hoover. I think he's playing great. And I got killed for that take because at the time he was throwing the ball to the other team a lot. And that Tech game was another example of when he was turning it over. But it's hard to describe how difficult it is to be an efficient passing team when everybody knows you can't run the ball. And they found a way to do that. And Josh found a way to do that. Now, the first half of the season, in all three phases, was rocky. But I would say even then, the offense was still the most consistent part of that football team. And it gives me optimism that even with all the departures in that receiving core, which you basically lost 3 NFL wide receivers. I don't know how long Jack Best, Savion Williams, J.P. Richardson's careers are going to go. I'm hopeful that it's going to be for a while. I think a couple of those guys have a great chance to stay on the team for a long time. And J.P. Richardson's making waves in Bears camp. But bottom line is you had 3 dudes on that roster as starters that were good enough to be on an NFL team. And they're moving on now. So that's a lot to replace. But given how good they were with the lack of a run game, it tells me that Josh Hoover played a big part in that too. It doesn't mean that the passing game might not take a little bit of a step back, but I don't think it's going to fall off a cliff. So that puts a lot of responsibility on the run game to be better this year. And when I was talking to Colton Deary about it at Media Days, he said, look, it starts with a mentality shift. We have to be a nasty team, a team that wants to be physical, that wants to impose our will on the opponent each and every week. I would agree with that. But I would also say, just from an execution standpoint, the two things go hand in hand. You need a more physical, better offensive line. You also need a running back room and running backs that are ready to hit the hole and run through people. Because the biggest area in my mind where Cam Cook struggled was he would just sort of tiptoe at times and string plays out and not get his foot in the ground and get those tough yards that you need sometimes on first down to turn 2nd and 12 into 2nd and 7. And I believe whether it's Kavorian Barnes or Nate Palmer or Jeremy Payne at times, there's been an emphasis on this coaching staff, and I believe John Denman falls into this category too, they want some bruisers this year. Just guys that are going to give them positive yardage, set up more manageable down distance situations, move the chains. So if you end up with a running back that has over 1,000 yards, that's great. I'm hopeful that somebody's going to take the reins, because I understand that in the NFL and in college football to a certain extent, we're getting more and more to a place where you don't have bell cow running backs that are taking the ball 30 times a game. I mean, Ashton Jeanty was an outlier in that regard. But you think back to that great team in 2022, Kendre Miller was the guy, and then Amari DiMercado was a nice complement to that. So somebody's going to emerge as the main player here, and then someone else has to step up and be a good change of pace. Josh Hoover has to take some of what the defense gives him. He doesn't need to turn into a dual threat quarterback, but at least present that threat. And then finally, the team has to be physical enough. So it's a big ask, and it's a big jump that this team needs, but I do think it's feasible if they play to their potential. When we come back, I think the Big Ten's mega playoff proposal is good for the Big 12. I'll explain why next year on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. One of our great sponsors is back, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is super easy to use. My brother-in-law is actually really into PrizePicks. He texts me every year during football season, or the last few years he has been like, hey, what do you think about this Dak Prescott more or less, or this Josh Allen more or less? And that's all it is. You just get on the app and you pick between 2 to 6 athletes, essentially over under or more or less stat totals, and you can win up to 200 times your money, whether you've got your eye on big name quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson or breakout running backs. Maybe you think Ashton Jeanty is going to be the big star for the Raiders this year. PrizePicks makes it easy to get in on the game. They also have the flex play option, which is a total game changer. Even one of your picks misses, you can still double your money. PrizePicks puts their members first. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege. You get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. Just a $5 investment to get that $50 lineup. PrizePicks. Give it a try. Do it today. One of our new sponsors, OpenPhone calls. If you need a phone call system for your business, recently at my job, we got rid of the old landlines finally, but we don't have a system. I need to tell my boss about this. OpenCall can make it really easy. It's an all-in-one business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you find yourself juggling 2 phones to keep business and personal calls separate? Your whole team can share one number on OpenPhone and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more delegating who's handling this. And the AI agent handles after-hours calls, common questions, and captures leads, so you'll never miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They're offering Locked On listeners 20% off for your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. That's openphone.com/LockedOnCollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Give OpenPhone a try today. So if you haven't been following the latest in the college football playoff saga, basically here's what's going on. In this year, there's going to be another 12-team playoff, as it was last season. But there's been constant talk about expansion. And so it seems like the number that most people have settled on for now is 16, potentially in 2026 and beyond. The Big Ten and the SEC have put forth a proposal for a 16-team playoff that would involve 4 automatic bids for the SEC, 4 for the Big Ten, 2 for the Big 12, 2 for the ACC, 1 for a group of 6 school, and then a couple of at-large bids. Brett Yormark has been adamantly against this and has countered with what they call the 5+11 model, which is just one automatic qualifier for each Power 5 conference champion and then 11 at-large bids. And his marketing line that he's been throwing out there with this idea is the Big 12 is a conference that wants to earn it on the field. They don't want to go along with this SEC Big 10. We get half of the automatic bids that you do. We want an open playing field outside of these conference champions so that we can earn it on the field and the committee can put us in. The Big 10 this weekend, it leaked that they are looking at a 24 or 28 team playoff moving forward. That there's still, this plan got leaked in its very early stages. They were just starting to throw this around, and then it got to the media, and of course it blew up. But the 28 team model would reportedly give the Big 10 and SEC 7 teams each, the Big 12 and the ACC 5 teams apiece, and then some combination of group of 5 at-large bids for the last 4 spots. And I know the Big 12 has been against any sort of scenario where the Big 10 and the SEC automatically gets more qualifying teams than the Big 12 and the ACC. And I completely understand why they think that. From a kind of branding perspective, you're sort of giving in to this narrative and this perception that those leagues are better and that you don't deserve the same seat at the table. I mean, just from a mathematic perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But I have a different opinion about this than most Big 12 people. I was watching my friend Parker Ainsworth. He did a segment on this on Monday on Locked On Cougs. He hosts the Houston show. We have a Big 12 group chat. And everyone's like, this Big 10 idea sucks. Don't go along with it. And look, I get it. I don't want to be the person that like bends the knee to the Big 10 and the SEC and kisses the ring. My issue is sticking with the 16 team idea for a second, and then I'll get to the larger idea. I get on the surface the 5 automatic qualifiers and 11 at-large spots. You want to have all those at-large spots open so that you can get teams in. Here's the problem. The committee has not been kind to you. Okay? They haven't. Last season, Arizona State got in because they won the league. BYU had a really good year. Now, unfortunately for them, they stumbled towards the end of the season, which is the worst time to do it in the playoff era. But they weren't even on the radar of the committee. Neither was Iowa State. There were no other Big 12 teams that were on the table for the committee besides the automatic qualifier. And Brett keeps talking about earning it on the field. Well, what about the fact that it's an unfair playing field? You're working against an institution that doesn't value what you do. And look, I get it. 65-7 is unfortunately a big part of this. And it sucks because TCU beat Michigan. Like, we all saw that happen. It's not like TCU just automatically got put in the national title game. They beat the Big Ten champion and won that game and got there. And then just fell completely on their face in that ball game. But we won a playoff game. Like, we got put in that situation and we handled ourselves well. Arizona State handled themselves really admirably against Texas last year. You could argue they should have won that game. I mean, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but you get what I mean. It was close. It was in double overtime, triple overtime. They had their chances. They stopped Texas on a 4th down in overtime and to win that ball game. They were right there. The gap is not as big as everyone wants to make it out to be. But the issue is, I don't think the committee believes that. And so while I don't love the idea of automatically giving up spots, I also want to be realistic and make sure that you can get opportunities, because I don't know what's going to change. The only thing in my mind that's going to change the mind of the national media is to win a national championship. So you have to give yourself a chance to do that. For somebody, hopefully it's TCU, to get back to the national championship game and win it. And then at that point, you'll basically kick the door in and say, hey, we're here. But until then, it's going to be an uphill battle. And while I understand why you love the idea of having these at-large bids, if the people that are making the decision don't respect you, it's tough to get in. We'll continue this conversation in a moment. Locked On Horned Frogs, your team. We do it here every day. Before we do that, though, I do need to talk about one of our fantastic sponsors, and that is DripDrop. They are here to help your hydration needs. Nobody drinks enough water. DripDrop makes water taste better for you. They have great flavors. My favorite is orange. They were kind enough to send me like a starter pack, a test pack, and I love it. It's also been really helpful for my wife, who gets terrible headaches when she doesn't drink enough water and enough fluid. DripDrop has been a game changer for her. She's a nurse. She's on her feet all the time. She's got patience. She doesn't have time to go fill up her water cup. But before she goes to work, she'll drink a DripDrop. Feels great for the first few hours of the day. Really helps her out. It's got 3 times the electrolyte of your favorite sports drinks, but not the bad sugars and everything that comes with it. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off your first order at DripDrop.com. Again, that's DripDrop.com to get 20% off your first order if you use code LOCKEDONCollege. Stay hydrated today. So in my mind, if you went to the 2018 model, which I think that would be good for the Big 12 just because it would give you more teams. And as much as I would hate to say goodbye to bowl games, I think we're heading there anyway. So that's just part of it. We're moving towards a world where it's going to look like D3, D2, the FCS, where maybe there's 32 teams involved. You don't want to concede those automatic bids right away, but 5 teams is a lot. I mean, if you have 5 teams in there, you can start selling and recruiting. Hey, because the biggest obstacle in my mind right now for Big 12 teams is when we talk about recruiting, the SEC and the Big 10 have become the place where, fair or unfair, like people believe they can win a national title and go to the league if they're in those 2 conferences. And I don't think they have the same confidence in the Big 12. So somebody has to break through and carry the torch for the league. But if you get 5 bids, 5 automatic bids, I mean, you can start talking to high school kids and transfers about, hey, look, we have significant opportunity here to at least make the playoff and go start winning some of these games and play for a national title. Like, there's a chance. You don't have to be the conference champion. Now, in this big scenario, I think conference title games might go away. You'd most likely just have a regular season champion named and then move on to the playoff. And that champion would hopefully get a bye week or something like that. But I would just caution Brett Yormark in the Big 12. I understand why you want to fight against these things. And probably more than anything, it's just the feeling of like, do we have any say in this, or are we just expected to say yes to whatever the Big 10 and the SEC think of that week? Because it's changing all the time. And that's part of the problem. They can't come to an agreement because every other day or every other week, somebody's like, well, what about this idea? What if we did this? And this would be a massive change. 12 to 16, I mean, yeah, it's a significant change, but doubling the playoff field, pretty wild, even though I guess they did that already by going from 4 to 12. But I just don't trust the committee, and I don't want to put it in their hands, the fate of the Big 12 and the fate of TCU moving forward, because I don't think they respect these schools. So I feel like it would behoove you more if you had ample opportunity to get multiple teams in, and then one of them could break through and win. And then at that point, you should get more respect from other leagues from recruits and beyond once you hoist that trophy. We'll be back tomorrow. We're less than 2 weeks from game day, friends. Fall camp's over. It's all about North Carolina prep. We'll talk more about that matchup later on in the week. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever each podcast